Good morning and welcome to Tuesday's grammar lesson. I hope you are all ready for the day and excited because I have a special surprise for you. Over the last week, you have seen a couple of special guests from my family who've been featuring in these videos, and I had so many lovely comments from people I spoke to on the phone and also from people who emailed to tell me they really enjoyed seeing my siblings in the video that I have persuaded them to help me with the video today. So stay tuned, you're going to see some funny clips of people in my family and especially my brother, who is going to be helping me a lot today. And if you enjoy it, make sure you leave a comment below or send me an email to say you liked having them in the video, because they always love to see your lovely feedback. Before we continue with the lesson today, I'm just going to go through the checklist of what you need. Remember that if at any point you have not completed something on the checklist, that you pause the video, go and do it, and then just press play when you're ready to carry on with the next part of today's lesson. So the first thing, do you have a pencil and a piece of paper or a book to write in? The second thing, you need to read up to the end of chapter 5 of Evie in the Jungle, and this chapter is called An Incredibly Daring Rescue. Most of you should have at least read up to the end of chapter 4, because those were the chapters that we were working on last week, chapters 1 to 4. So, if you're already up to the end of chapter 4, all you need to do now is pause the video and read chapter 5 before you carry on. If you've missed any lessons from last week, or you're not even up to the end of chapter 4, don't worry, just pause the video and catch up with your reading until the end of chapter 5. And if you haven't even started the book yet, or you haven't downloaded the book, do not worry, there is a video in the description below where if you click on it, it will show you how to download the book. So you can do that before you continue with today's lesson and make sure you're caught up to the end of chapter 5. If you're watching the video now, it means you've already done number 1, so you have a pen and paper and you've already read up to the end of chapter 5. So well done. Before we carry on with today's lesson, the last thing you need to do is to write the date and the LI. Now the date and LI are down there at the bottom. You can see it should say 28th of April 2020 with the short date, Year 3 Reading and Grammar, and then underneath it says LI to recall the rules of direct speech punctuation. So that's a clue as to what we're going to be doing today, direct speech. And once you've written the date and LI, you can carry on with the rest of the lesson. So pause now if you need to, and then press play. Let's start by recapping what we already know about the story Evie in the Jungle. So we're going to summarise chapters 1 to 4. So at the beginning of the story, we find out that Evie has this special talent, which is interspecies telepathic communication, so she can actually understand animals' thoughts and talk to them with her mind. We also find out that she wants to go to the Amazon rainforest, and specifically to the Peruvian side of the rainforest, because the Brazilian side was where her mum unfortunately died when Evie was younger. She persuades her dad, even though it's dangerous, to let her go, and they end up on this fantastic boat trip down the Amazon River, and they're heading towards this famous city called Iquitos. On the way, they notice that a lot of destruction is happening in the rainforest, so they can see smoke and lands which have been totally cleared by people probably trying to build stuff there. The animals don't seem too happy about it. She encounters lots of different animals along the way, and in the most recent chapter, she even finds the famous pink river dolphins, manages to speak to them and share some food with them. And at the end of the chapter, she sees this sloth hanging out of the tree. And chapter 5 is all about her interaction with the sloth. So we're going to start our work today at the beginning of chapter 5. So it's this page here, which you all should have read already. What I want to point out to you about this chapter is that there is a lot of direct speech. For those of you who might have forgotten, direct speech is the part of a story which shows us what a person said. So it's reporting to the reader what was actually said out loud by some of the characters. In this scene, there are lots of types of direct speech. Most types of direct speech are made up of 2 clauses. Some of you will remember this from when we studied it a few months ago. In direct speech, you have a speech clause, which is the bit that tells us what was actually said out loud. It's the actual words said by the character. And then you have the reporting clause, which says who said it, and often how they said it. Let's take a simple example from this chapter. Here we have, "She's right," said Jerry. So the first bit, "she's right," is the speech clause, and that's why it's got speech marks around it, because that shows us that's what he actually said out loud. The second bit shows us who said it, said Jerry, and that is the reporting clause, because it's about who is actually saying the speech. Some of you might be confused because you can see that here there's only one speech mark on each side. And when we learnt it initially, we normally practiced having 2 speech marks on each side. This is another way that you will often see it in stories, and it's not wrong. You can actually either use 2 on each side or 1 on each side. The important thing is that you can see the shape of the speech mark. You can see it almost looks like a tiny little 6 on one side and a tiny little 9 on the other side. That's how you should practice drawing your own speech marks. A common mistake that people often make with direct speech is they get confused about which words that they write down in their story actually need to go inside the inverted commas. What I'm going to do to help you understand this is show you what this story would look like if we acted out the scene as the actual characters. So we're going to show you what parts the characters actually said out loud, and all the bits that we don't say is just the narration. So that's the things that the characters didn't say, but the information that the author is giving you. So, can I have siblings appear, please? That's it, okay. 3, 2, 1. Over there! Oh, over there, look, a sloth. It needs our help. She's right.
There is no way we can reach it. Look! The fire's getting close to the edge, and all the smoke. It is far too dangerous.
Hopefully that scene should have helped you understand what the difference is between direct speech and the rest of the text in your story. So the direct speech is the bit that the characters actually say out loud. And now we've recapped that, let's go ahead and recap some of the other grammar rules we need to remember when we're punctuating direct speech. And we're going to be using simple sentences mainly. There's lots of different types of direct speech sentences, but we're going to be doing simple ones where there's a speech clause, which is what the person said out loud first, and then the reporting clause. And remember, the reporting clause just is the bit where it says who said the words out loud. So, at the beginning of a sentence that is speech said out loud, you should always have a capital letter. So you can see we've got the first inverted comma, then we've got the capital letter, and then at the end of the speech clause, you can have one of 3 types of punctuation. If it's just a normal sentence, you will usually have a comma. If you had a sentence that wasn't direct speech in a normal story, how would you end the sentence? What type of punctuation would you use? If you're thinking full stop, you're right. Normally, at the end of the sentence, you should have a full stop. However, with direct speech, it's different. You normally have a comma. The only exceptions to this rule is if you have a question or an exclamation in your direct speech. Let's look at an example. Over here it says, "What's the matter?" the thought asked. Just like the other example, we have the speech first and the reporting clause second. However, this speech ends in a question mark instead of a comma, because the speech is a question. This is just something to remember. Most of the time you will be using a comma at the end of your direct speech, but sometimes you might need a question mark or an exclamation mark. You will also notice that after the speech clause, the next bit starts with a lowercase letter, not a capital, even if it's got a question mark at the end. So remember, the speech clause always starts with a capital letter at the beginning of a sentence, and the reporting clause starts with a lowercase letter. You might get confused when you're reading because you might see examples of speech clauses that end with a full stop. But didn't we just say that you don't usually end a speech clause with a full stop? Just to explain that, for those of you who are curious, a full stop is used at the end of a speech clause only if it's not followed by a reporting clause. So if that's the end of the paragraph or of that section. For example, here we've got, there is no way we can reach it, Ernesto said. That's a normal speech clause plus reporting clause. Then he carries on. Look, the fire is getting closer to the edge, and all the smoke. It is far too dangerous. Here, the author has not put the words Ernesto said again, because we already know he's speaking. We know he's speaking because the author did not start this speech on a new line. In this example, that means we don't have a reporting clause after the speech clause, like we would in our earlier examples. For that reason, the direct speech can end in a full stop. When you're practicing your direct speech today, I want you to practice the basic version of direct speech, which is when there's always the speech clause first and the reporting clause which explains who said those words. As you get more advanced into Year 4 and Year 5, you may practice doing speech where there isn't a reporting clause straight after, where you may be using full stops, but that is not for today. So hopefully, looking at that chapter of Evie in the Jungle has helped fix in your mind how direct speech works, because you've seen lots of examples. And in this second, I'm going to show you a scene between me and my brother, and using that scene, we're going to practice how to write direct speech. Before we carry on, let's just summarise the main rules that we should already know about direct speech. On my left or right, depending on which way you're looking at the screen, on this side, the rules are all written out so you can follow along. If you want to pause the video and write these down, I really recommend it because it's going to come in very useful for you when you're doing your tasks. So once I've talked them through, you can pause the video, write them down, and then carry on with today's lesson. The general rules of direct speech are: each new character's speech starts on a new line. Speech is opened with speech marks. Each line of speech starts with a capital. The line of speech ends with a comma, exclamation mark, or question mark. A reporting clause is used at the end. Said Jane, shouted Paul, replied Mum. Those are some examples of reporting clauses. And a full stop goes after the reporting clause. One of the things I want to draw your attention to is this first rule here. Each new character's speech starts on a new line. We've learnt this rule before, new speaker, new line. But especially when you're doing a dialogue between two people, remember that each time a different person speaks, all of your writing should start on the next line. Okay, so now you're going to watch the scene. First, you're going to watch it all the way through, then we're going to watch it bit by bit, and I'm going to show you how you can write what is happening using direct speech.
Can I have a cucumber, please?
Sure. Here you go.
Thank you.
So, the first person who just spoke was my brother, and he said, "Can I have a cucumber, please?" As I'm starting with the speech clause, the words that he said, I need to start with my inverted commas. So I need to open the clause with inverted commas. Then, the word can, the first word that he says, needs to have a capital letter. And I can carry on until the end of what he said. Can I have a cucumber, please? Now, this is a question. So, do I need to put an exclamation mark, a comma, or a question mark? The answer is a question mark because it is a question. Then I close the inverted commas because that's the end of what he said. So now I need to do my reporting clause. The person speaking was Rishiv. So I need to say said Rishiv. And notice that I put an lowercase s here instead of a capital letter because the reporting clause that comes after a speech clause always has a lowercase letter, even if it's preceded by a question mark. Now you can see at the end of that, since that's the end of this whole set of direct speech, I'm missing something. I need to put a full stop.
Can I have a cucumber, please?
Sure. Here you go. The next person to speak was me, and I said, "Sure, here you go." So again, open my direct speech, start with a capital letter. Here you go. Now, does this need a question mark, an exclamation mark, or a comma? Is it a question? No. Is it an exclamation? No. So it needs a comma. And then I need to close my inverted commas. Notice how the inverted commas always go after the comma or the exclamation mark or the question mark. Then it was me who said it. Full stop. Sure. Here you go.
Thank you.
The last bit is he just said thank you. Notice how each time a different person is speaking, I have started a new line. Even though Rishabh has spoken before, the last person to speak was me, so I need to start a new line for his last bit of speech. And he simply says, thank you. Comma, because it's not a question or an exclamation, close the exclamation mark, and then I need to say said Rishabh. And that is the scene written in direct speech punctuation. Now you've seen an example of how to record a scene using direct speech, it's time for you to have a go yourself. I've left my example here on the worksheet and on the screen so you can remember how to do it. Remember also to refer back to the rules that we learnt about punctuating direct speech that we went through earlier, and hopefully you have written down in your books. If you are in the Jade or the Indigo groups, you need to do scene 1. Once you finish scene 1, you don't need to do any more. You can have a break and finish your lesson and move on to the next lesson. If you are not in the Jade or the Indigo group, you need to do scenes 2 and 3. If you would like a further challenge and you are already comfortable with direct speech, the challenge question is, can you do these scenes, write them down and record them, but use different words instead of said? So for example, instead of saying, can I have a cucumber please, said Rishabh, you could write, can I have a cucumber please, asked Rishabh. And then for the next one you could say, sure, here you go, replied Miss Panata. Thank you, said Rishabh. So you could use a mixture of different verbs for said. Enjoy your tasks and I look forward to seeing your work sent in to the Year 3 email address. Rishabh, it's time to wake up. It's nearly 10 o'clock.
Leave me alone. I'm so tired. Oh my gosh, did you eat my sandwich?
No, why would I eat your sandwich?
So who ate my sandwich? Hey, I want to watch TV.
No, it's my turn today.
No, it's my turn.
No, it was your turn yesterday. Today it's my turn.
But I really need to watch Peppa Pig.
You're too old for Peppa Pig.
No, I'm not too old. You can't be too old for Peppa Pig.
Once you've finished your work, don't forget to get a parent or guardian to take a picture and send it in. I would love to see what kind of things you got for your scenes. And if you need to go back and re-watch the scenes, you're welcome to rewind the video. Watching it once might not be enough. And as a treat for the end of the lesson, here's a little blooper of something funny happened when I was filming with my brother. Enjoy!